Mr. President, I come to the floor today at the start of this new year and this new Congress to speak about how we can and why we must work together to improve the Affordable Care Act. Since work on health care reform really began in earnest in 2009, debate in this chamber and across this country has too often been defined by fantastic claims and fear-mongering. And in the midst of this division, I feel too often the experiences of real people have been lost. While politicians on both sides cling to their sacred cows, too many Americans become casualties of our divided politics. And I think on few issues has this been more true than on health care. Mr. President, critics of the Affordable Care Act seem locked into the belief that it will bring about America's demise, despite little evidence to support that. Too often, they've been unable or unwilling to grapple with the reality of those whose lives the law has forever changed for the better. On the other side of the aisle, we, mostly Democrats, have often shied away from acknowledging some of the law's weaknesses. I know many of my colleagues have been eager and have offered fixes to the law, but without willing Republican partners, we haven't made enough progress. Mr. President, as I've spent time in my home state of Delaware in recent months listening to families and other folks who've been affected by the law, for better or for worse, it's become clear to me that this stalemate is unsustainable. On many days, I've met Delawareans who love the Affordable Care Act, whose lives have literally been saved by it. But in between those encounters, I've also met many, small business owners in particular, who want to offer health insurance to their workers and are struggling to afford it. This much has become clear to me. No conversation about the Affordable Care Act and how to improve it can be complete without reconciling the reality of millions of Americans it has helped and the many others for whom it falls short. Mr. President, Michelle Reed is a Delawarean who I've come to know and admire with breast cancer who contacted me first about this issue last fall. She's an example of why the Affordable Care Act is so important. Michelle was first diagnosed with cancer back in 2008 and went through month after painful month of chemo and radiation therapy as well as surgery. And over the next few years since her cancer nightmare began, she faced problems that were sadly typical of how our health insurance system used to work. At the time she was first diagnosed, she and her husband received health insurance through her husband's employer. Her husband's an auto mechanic and worked for a small auto body shop. But though the insurance he got through his work was helpful for routine minor health care needs, it was a bare bones insurance policy, as she explained it to me. It left her and her husband with extremely high copays that strained their family budget. Naturally, her husband began looking for a new job that would provide better health insurance. But this ended up being much more difficult than it seemed because transitioning to a new job often required accepting a large 3-month gap in coverage, a gap Michelle just couldn't afford as insurance companies would then deny her care, considering her cancer a pre-existing condition. At one point during Michelle's years of treatment, her husband's employer switched health care plans and in the process missed one premium payment. Suddenly, after months of having had steady, positive progress in her care, without any warning or notification, Michelle started getting bills, not just small bills, but huge bills. A bill for $23,000 for radiation expenses. It took her months of going back and forth between employer and insurance company, all the while as she's also trying to overcome her disease, before Michelle and her husband got a straight answer about why they were suddenly facing these huge costs. Now let's step back for a second and just imagine where she was. Michelle has cancer. She is shuttling from chemo to radiation. Her husband's working constantly to try and cover the high premiums, trying to get all the overtime he can. And during this, they're also going back and forth between employer and insurance company, trying to figure out where this new high charge they can't afford has come from. Meanwhile, Michelle's husband's out looking for new jobs with better insurance, struggling to find one because Michelle would face discrimination and couldn't get coverage. The emotional strain on a family and a loved one battling cancer is enormous, almost unimaginable. But if you add to that the financial and the emotional stress caused by our relic of a healthcare insurance system of that time, it's unimaginable. Yet this is the reality that Michelle and her family faced. And unfortunately, it's the reality that millions of Americans used to face before the Affordable Care Act. These problems all changed last year when the ACA's exchanges came online. And as Michelle wrote to me, the ACA open enrollment began and we couldn't get signed up quick enough. Although it did take her a little while because the administration's website had some problems, she persevered, and as she said to me in her note, we have no problems now. We have what we need, and we need what we have. Mr. President, people like Michelle are why Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act in the first place. And it's because of the law that millions of Americans now have access to quality and affordable health insurance that was once desperately out of reach for them. But the story is not complete unless we are clear-eyed about where this law also falls short. As the President and many Democrats have recognized, any significant reform effort like the Affordable Care Act is going to have weaknesses and unintended consequences that only become apparent after the law is being implemented. And this has been true throughout our history with every major advance, and health care reform is no different. In Delaware, among the many whom the law has helped, I've also seen how some of these reforms and the costs they've incurred have hurt small businesses. To the small business owners that I've sat down and listened to, their employees aren't labor costs or rows on a balance sheet, they're family. They've worked together for years, and owners provide health insurance because they believe it's the right thing to do for the workers who help their business grow. Though many of the folks I've sat down and visited with aren't required to provide insurance because they've got fewer than 50 full-time workers, they still want to do so because it's the right thing to do, and it helps them incentivize and support their best employees. Many, though, are struggling today because of higher costs and the challenges that come with navigating a changed insurance market. This year, the biggest issue they've faced is how higher quality standards have also caused premiums to increase, often to unaffordable levels. This has been especially true for a small state like Delaware, where there isn't a lot of competition in the provision of health care or in our insurance market. Unfortunately, some of the increase is also due to insurance companies using the health care law as an excuse to charge more. Some of it is also simply the result of plans that now cover more, costing more. For the most part, that aspect isn't a bad thing. But the Affordable Care Act was designed to compensate for increased quality with financial assistance to those who can't afford it. In Michelle Reed's case, this increased quality was great, almost literally life-saving. And it's for people like her that insurance plans now need to meet certain standards. In particular, that they can no longer discriminate against pre-existing conditions. But we've also seen that even though there's assistance to many, some individuals and some small businesses have fallen into gaps where they have to deal with higher costs and they're not getting the help they deserve. So, Mr. President, here's where we are. The Affordable Care Act has helped millions of Americans, and it also can be improved to help many more. When we talk about health care, it is simply dishonest to leave one side out when talking about both. In this new Congress, I know many of my Republican colleagues are eager to continue efforts of their colleagues in the House. In the majority, I know many will seek an opportunity to vote on repealing or dismantling the Affordable Care Act, but I would ask them for an answer to Michelle Reed and the many Americans like her who have had their lives changed or even saved by this law. I know many of my Democratic colleagues are as well eager to work together to improve our healthcare system, to ensure small businesses can do the right thing and be successful, and to ensure that no American gets left behind. We know this is possible. There's no reason to believe that we as a body lack the creativity, the drive, and the ability to work together across the aisle on these important issues. Surely there is much we can do to reduce costs through competition, to develop new and more efficient delivery systems, and innovative payment models. The Affordable Care Act took critical steps to move forward in each of these areas. Millions more have health insurance, and costs across our healthcare system have actually increased at the slowest rate in decades. For most, costs have been manageable or even decreased, but critical work remains. We now have the opportunity, Mr. President, to take the next steps to building a healthcare system that works for every American. And it is my sincere hope that we can come together and to seize that opportunity. Mr. President, with that, thank you, and I yield the floor.